How would it feel to have a thriving fitness business and have the freedom to enjoy life at the fullest? Well, that is exactly what the Trainer Revenue Multiplier Show is going to give you. My name is Mathew Park. This is Jaime Filer.
Hey guys.
And we are here to serve.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Trainer Revenue Multiplier Show. As always, I'm your host, Jaime Filer, and today I am joined by Nick Langer, who owns Team BR Physiques. But if you are familiar at all with the fitness industry, you probably know his name. Nick, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. I'd love to know. I'm going to be honest. I Googled you, and your LinkedIn page was the first thing to come up. I feel like you are so far removed.
Oh, yeah.
I'm seeing right now on the screen is not the same guy with the LinkedIn profile. So tell me a little bit about where you came from in terms of your fitness industry, but also your business experience.
Yeah. So I actually, I started out in the fitness industry back in 2009. I've been in and out of multiple different areas in the fitness industry. I've been in the supplement industry. I've been in gyms. I've been in personal training. I've kind of gone all different realms of this world. And, you know, I started out originally as I was going to college and ended up getting a bachelor's in science in pre-med, in biology, was going to be a doctor, and then realized that meant 6 more years of college, and I was not about to do that.
Yeah.
And, you know, it just so happened that in 2010, I had taken the year off from playing college football because I had a brain bleed that actually really changed the route of my life at that point in time. And I had a random person approach me in the gym and ask me if I've ever thought about competing. And so I ended up competing and kind of starting my bodybuilding journey that also led into everything else.
Right.
And that actually was I went from 255-ish to about 176 pounds in 16 weeks and kind of put my body through the ringer and was able to kind of see what it is firsthand to live that lifestyle. And on top of that, at that same exact time, ended up getting certified as a personal trainer and kind of stepping my foot in the door of this realm. And was also really into, supplements and kind of understanding that. And I've always been, I think there were aspects in my life that always had me lifting for a reason. And that kind of goes back to, childhood and things that happened then. But, it was more of an aspect of this kind of opened that door to me. And I started to really dive headfirst into the fitness industry, and then got into the supplement industry. Was a manager for Complete Nutrition, who is no longer around, but was a manager for them for some of their stores, and then ended up taking a district manager position for GNC and ran about 7 stores across 4 states. And then ended up getting an opportunity to work with my co-owner on the gyms, Tim Rexius, who owns Rexius Nutrition. And I actually started out kind of at the baseline with his organization and then moved up to franchise development and kind of started to see the back ends of how businesses work. Was able to understand, the cost and everything that goes along with businesses, and, was able to do a lot of the training and was also in charge of brand development and product development and everything from that for Rexius Nutrition. And the gyms actually were just, and along with this, the entire time I'm still coaching, right? So still coaching the whole time. And it was it was one of those things where I was in the shops working, and there would always be people coming in asking about nutrition or training or whatever it might have been. And so I was able to build a pretty decent coaching business on top of working full time for him inside the stores and or networking or whatever I was doing. And it just so happened that we ended up going out to a competitor's warehouse with a coach of mine at that time. And the competitor had this massive 30,000 square foot warehouse, but inside that warehouse, they had a 3,000 square foot gym. And they were using the warehouse to basically create their own gym and have a place where they could write it off because they had all their supplements there.
Yep.
So my business partner and I looked at each other and we're like, we got to do this, right? There was an issue in our market where we didn't have a gym that had everything in one spot. So my competitive background was both powerlifting and bodybuilding, and I didn't have a gym where I could do both and have all the tools necessary to get that job done. Yeah. And so I saw a niche that was missing, and I ended up, so that's why we created Iron Heaven Gym. And really, we started that gym with more of an aspect of like, it was kind of selfish, you know, it was like,
You wanted a playground.
Yeah. I'm going to create something. And if it doesn't make money, I don't care, as long as I don't lose my ass. Right.
Yeah.
That was key.
Yeah.
But we started to create this environment and create this want that a lot of people wanted. And I didn't even realize it. And it just progressed and it took off. And because of the fact of, you know, the way that we are as far as building culture, we were able to actually get more momentum. And that momentum grew and grew, and we expanded the first location. And then we got a need for another one on the other side of town. So we opened a second location. And then 3 years later now, we opened our third location about 6 months ago, and they've just continually grown every single year. We haven't had a year down at all, even through COVID.
Okay.
And so the gym just kind of took off. Well, obviously, as the head trainer of the gyms, my training business took off at the same time.
Yep.
And so I had to really figure out, and this was kind of the conversation why I came to TRM in the first place. I had to figure out how to scale it without doing it all myself. Because at the time I had about a little over 100 client roster myself, which is a lot, right?
This is right, Nick. This is between online and in person.
Correct. Yeah. So it makes me cringe looking back on it now. So
Okay.
I was having about 100 client roster, and what ended up happening is I've got 2 young boys and I've got a wife, obviously, and a lot of my time was being spent working with those clients, and a lot of my time not in the gym, just the time that I should be spending with my family, I was on my phone, messaging clients, talking to clients, whatever it might have been. Yeah. And so I had to create something. I had to figure out how to create impact, because I don't like turning people down, because they're coming to me for a reason. Right.
They still need what you have, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And so I was like, okay, well, how do we do this? And, you know, that's when Jeff Black actually introduced me to Matt, and Matt and I had a conversation about it. And, you know, I realized, yes, the roster of the amount of clients that I had was massive, but the other issue was more so an aspect that it didn't have a lot of my structures from the back end set up to make that efficient. And then on top of that, I didn't really understand how to create the team, foster a team, and then start to kind of transition people into positions where it's less work, but I'm still able to do what I love, which is educate and help and move the company in the right direction by making sure everybody that's with me and by my side has the same mentality, the same morals, and the same work ethic in those realms. So
how do we create a culture in addition to
correct? So,
yeah,
exactly. So, you know, it was creating a culture within BR Physiques and creating a culture. I've already created that culture in Iron Heaven, which is great, but it's more of an aspect of, okay, this is a different animal. So how do we create that same culture with a different mentality, right? Of coaches, and creating coaches that are next level in comparison to what else is out there. And that was kind of the fast action of what my kind of backstory is.
So I was writing down several questions as you were talking. The first one was, you know, at first it sounded like you were a bit of a serial monogamist, right? We would do one thing, and then when we were done, we'd move on to the other thing. But then when I asked you were like, oh, and this whole time I was also personal training. So do you think that hurt, hindered, or helped you at all to have your fingers in a couple of different pies versus like, you know what? Forget personal training. I'm going to go all in supplement industry. And then boom, I'm moving on and going all in.
Yeah, I think it's quite a complicated answer, only because of the fact that a lot of things that I look at in life are kind of, you know, gray area. Yeah. But what I will say is this is, I think if I would have been able to dive headfirst into training and headfirst into educating myself even more, I probably could have been further ahead than where I am, right? If I would have actually understood the systems, understood how to implement that faster, then yes. I mean, the place that I'm at right now would be tenfold if I would have done that earlier. But the thing that I will say is the experiences and the things that I saw along the way also taught me a lot of lessons that I can apply and are making transitions a lot faster that I think others would have to kind of like tiptoe around and kind of figure out and lose quite a bit before they see that. So, you know, I think in that aspect, it's just part of my journey. It's part of what has gotten me to this point. But I do, obviously think like, yes, if I would have just gone full bore and went straight after it right out the gate, I definitely could have been further ahead from where we are.
Absolutely. Now, what do you think, or to what do you attribute your success, especially from, I guess, the beginning of 2020, end of 2019 until March 24th, 2022, you guys keep growing year after year?
So I think a lot of that just comes down to adaptability. So we were able to, so from a gym side, we were able to actually look at the market, see what was happening, see where things were moving, and understanding that we had to make an adjustment where people could join our gym and be able to come into our gym without any contact at all, to kind of go around that boundary, right? The other thing is that I had to dive headfirst and full force into social media, which I'm going to tell you right now, I can't stand social media. Like, it's the one thing that I would like. I don't like to do
all the time. Yeah.
As much as I come across as an extrovert, I'm very much more of an introverted person, right? I mean, I know you can understand that too.
Totally.
So it's a daily thing where I have to force myself out of that shell. But I also understand that I started to see the trends of the fact that I'm seeing 21, 22-year-old kids come into my gym, and I'm seeing, 6 months later, they've got 100,000 followers on whatever. And, now they're coaches, and now they're getting a bunch of clients.
I hope that's where you were going with this.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
So I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, there's something to this, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a massive demographic that I am missing, and there's a massive demographic that needs the right face in that area, right? And so, I understand that, my beard, bald-headed man is not going to attract the 17, 18-year-old kids that want to get shredded and have like a six-pack at 180 pounds. That's fine.
Yep.
But I do know that there's clientele out there that need my help. And I do know that there are people out there that I can impact, and that the knowledge that I've accrued over these 12, 13 years can be used to help them reach their goals. And at the end of the day, my entire purpose on this earth is to impact others, right? Like, that is the reason why I'm here. And that's the reason why I continue to grow this. It's the financial side effects that come from it are great, but that's not the driver for me. The driver for me is, how many people can I truly impact? How many people can I teach in my team to continue to expand that impact beyond even what I'm capable of?
So it's interesting you brought up a team, because you have a pretty decent one now between Iron Heaven and BR Physiques. What are we looking at in terms of your staff?
Yeah, so with BR Physiques, I have 8 coaches underneath me at this time. All of them are hybrid models, so they're all either online or in person. And their structures are kind of person dependent. I've got at this point in time, I have one head trainer that kind of also handles a lot of the in-person sales inside of my gym. And then he also ends up kind of looking over a few of those trainers. He's actually transitioning to a position now where he's actually going to completely rebuild an entire brand new team for himself, with a brand new pay structure and all of that. So it's evolving very fast, as far as the business goes, just because we're having to kind of see that evolving aspects. But at this point in time, so it's 8 trainers underneath of BR Physiques. And then the gym, I've got a general manager that runs all 3 of my gyms. And then on top of that, we've got about 12 part-time employees that we have rotating through all 3 locations at any given time. Yep.
And you still coach, do you not?
I do. Yeah. So
you determine who gets to be on like Nick Langer's roster.
Yeah. So at this point in time, I've gotten to the point where it's either you're going to pay the price, or it comes down to the fact that you're an individual that I know has a high influence that will allow me to bring more to my team.
Okay.
So the only time that I'll ever make a compromise is if it's somebody that's an individual that I know has a higher level of influence that I know can give us traction for the future. And when I compromise, it's not even much. It's barely compromising on my pricing, but it's more of an aspect of, I understand that if somebody works with me, I know that they're going to get results. So it's an easy aspect for me to understand that if that person has a specific following, or for instance, like I have a female that I'm working with right now that's on one of the local news channels. And so, creating those relationships, I understand that the ROI on that is not what I'm making from them right now. The ROI on that is something that's long-term, and that they had exposure for. So
absolutely. Absolutely. Now you mentioned both powerlifting and bodybuilding, and I'm super curious. I competed last year in 2021, and the discipline, and I haven't competed since 2016. I forgot how much it took and how organized I had to be. I'm curious, what have you learned through bodybuilding that has helped in business, and also maybe vice versa? What have you learned in business that has helped you in your bodybuilding career?
So as far as bodybuilding, honestly, I would say that majority of my success is attributed to what I had to do from a bodybuilding standpoint, and also from being like a collegiate athlete. Is I had to learn how to organize a schedule and make sure that I stuck to it. And so bodybuilding is very much like that. If you don't have everything in order, you're going to fail, because there's too many variables throughout your day. And especially I'm learning that even more now, because I have multiple businesses that I'm looking after, and my responsibilities have gotten larger as the time has gone on.
Yep.
And so it's kind of a new venture that I'm kind of traveling down at this point in time, because, when bodybuilding, when you look at it, you have to balance your workouts, you have to balance your recovery, you have to balance your nutrition, you have to balance all of that.
Yeah.
And when you got a business, a full-time business, and now, the big stress for me is not the money that I'm making. It's the fact that I want my people to be making good money. I want my people to succeed. And so it's more of an aspect. I have more stress and more strain on my shoulders because it's not about me anymore. Right. And so bodybuilding has taught me structure, and has taught me how to create that structure in order to continue to advance and grow, and be able to be efficient with my time, which is probably the hardest part.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that. I think I've heard Andy Frisell. I remember him talking and saying, listen, I own a Porsche. I actually own a couple. It's not about that anymore for me. I want every single one of my employees to own Porsches. Right. I love that mentality.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I was a big box gym trainer for a year, and I remember making, $12 an hour or whatever it was, some horrible amount of money. And looking at it and going, there's no effing way that I'm going to survive on this. Right. And then looking at it and going, okay, how can I restructure? It's the same exact thing we did with the gyms. I looked at it and I go, okay, every gym in my area is shit. There's nothing that is exactly what I want.
Yeah.
So how do we create something that allows us to have exactly what we want? And how do I create a business that allows that to happen? It's the same for my trainers. I want to create a business that at the end of the day, I can give the people that come to me that I can't take myself, but I can teach my trainers how to create a business for themselves, that if they get to the point where they've built their roster way outside of what BR Physiques is giving them, I'll just bring new trainers on and train new trainers, right? I'll continue to grow this, and I'll impact more trainers. So again, I'm changing more lives. I'm not just changing the clients' lives, I'm changing the trainers' lives.
Trainer who has however many clients.
Exactly. So it's an aspect for me where it's like, at the end of the day, my entire goal of building the team was, I have too many damn people. I need to hand them off. I have too many people coming to me. I need to hand them off.
Yeah.
So if I can build a team where I can still hand off clients, and clients are still getting the service that I want and being treated the way that I want, and I can also teach my trainers how to do social media, how to actually create an influence, how to actually build their own roster outside of me. If their clients don't step in my gym, have at it. That's you. I don't want any piece of it, right? And if we do that, now I've got trainers that are loyal, that are going to stay with BR Physiques because of the fact that I'm not taking everything from them anyways, and I'm teaching them how to be successful trainers. And at the end of the day, I'm able to create, again, the impact, because all of these trainers, even if those clients come to them as online clients solely away from BR Physiques, and I'm not even touching it, I already know that the principles that I've taught them and the things that I'm teaching them are getting passed on. And that is all that matters to me.
Yep. That is culture, right? That is legacy, rather. That is not culture. That is legacy.
Correct.
So, okay. So I'm curious, bring it back to TRM for a second. I'm curious because you've been in the program for a little over a year now. What are we looking at?
Yeah, this is 13 months right now.
13 months, right? That's what I thought. Okay. So I'm curious. Number one, what was the first lesson you ever learned in TRM? And then part two is, what is the biggest lesson you learned in TRM?
So the first lesson that I would say really hit home for me was, don't ever undervalue yourself. So it's a hard lesson because, I think even myself, especially being in the Midwest, it's one of those things where it's like, there's no way people are going to go for a certain price point, right?
Yep.
But there's no way that that's going to happen. And the minute that I sold with conviction, and the minute that I was able to actually talk about what I have to offer and the value of what I have to offer, it made it much easier. And so it was like, okay, this makes sense. This is how we actually make this work, right? Yeah. So that would be like the main one that I took away from it. Outside of that, from like the continuing aspect, I would say probably the biggest impact that I'm seeing at this point in time is allowing myself to let others have control.
Oh.
Because that is probably the hardest thing for me as a bodybuilder, as somebody who's very type A and wants to control everything and control every aspect of everything I can do. Yeah. It's very hard for me to be like, okay,
it's all yours. Yeah.
And that's honestly the hardest thing for me still to this day that I fight myself with is I have to get out of my own way and I have to allow the people that I know have the skills to do the job. And are they going to screw up? Yes. But at the same time, that's a learning experience. That's a point for me to teach them how to create what they need to create in order to move this in the right direction. Because another lesson I learned along the way is I do a lot of things that I don't realize I'm doing all the time, right?
That you don't need to be doing, right?
What's that?
That you don't need to be doing?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, and then the other aspect of that is there's a lot of things inside of my SOPs that I'm not even realizing I'm doing throughout my day because there's such time. I take them for granted because I've done them for so long that when I bring somebody on as a brand new person to do that job, I'm realizing that those little pieces are missing and those little pieces make a massive difference. And so, always auditing those SOPs to really continue to bring that customer experience has been a huge thing as well.
That's brilliant. Speaks to systems. All right. So I guess I'm switching gears a little bit. BR Physiques, Baby Rhino Physiques. How did we even come up with that name?
So it was actually a nickname given to me by my brother. So let's go back. So we were playing slow pitch softball together. Okay. And at that time, I think I don't know. I think I was weighing like 245 or something like that. And anyways, I was playing center field and I ran across center field and he basically said, "Man, you look like a silverback gorilla running across center field." And he's like, "But you're not really tall enough. So no, you're more of like a baby rhino running across the outfield." I was like, "Cool, thanks." And he so anyways, then that following Christmas, he actually got me a cardio weight belt that says Baby Rhino on it, aka Nick Langer underneath of it. And that literally, so I started wearing that weight belt when I'd go to the gym, and then everybody started calling me Baby Rhino. So, it was just a nickname that he ended up giving me. And then I changed it to BR Physiques because it sounds a lot more appropriate than Baby Rhino Physiques and a lot more professional. And so that's the reason why I ended up switching to that for the name.
I love that. Thank you for that little part of your history, Nick.
Of course.
You're a guy who is big on continuing education. I mean, the first time I ever met you, I knew you from TRM, but the first time I ever met you was PEC Dallas. So you do value education. You're big on self-development. I want to do a rapid fire, your top 5, not even 5 resources. Let's say right away, money. Where do you learn about money?
Books. So I do a lot of reading, especially when it comes to wealth development and the aspects on where to go with that aspect. So
give me a book. Give the listeners a book.
I mean, honestly, the biggest one, the basic one that everybody knows is Think and Grow Rich. So I mean, that one's the easiest one. I mean, that's
either Rich Dad Poor Dad, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, those are, and the principles in that still hold steady to this day. So
100%.
Where it's like, it just makes sense. So that would be kind of the one that I would always go to for sure.
All right. What about exercise phys? Where are you keeping up to date on what the body's doing?
Yeah. So I actually thoroughly enjoy Muscle Nerds. They're a company based out of Australia. Luke Lehman is the head guy over there. But I have a couple of their courses, and their courses. The cool thing about them is once you buy into their courses, it actually every single year they redo them, and then you can take
amazing.
so that entry, and I don't know, I'm going to say I don't know necessarily because I joined it about 3 years ago, so it could be completely different now. But I know when I joined it, it's one of those things where they continually update and change it, and then you can be a part of the entire program every single time they re-release it every year. So.
That's super cool. Self-development mindset.
I'm a podcast listener for that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So I am a big Andy Frisella fan. He is one that I enjoy, and he's very much like a Midwest values, no BS kind of guy.
Yep.
So I can relate to that. So that, I mean, he's one. But there's a couple other like podcasts that I would go to as well.
Okay. And then last one, leadership, team building.
So that's actually where I reach out to peers. So there's others that are kind of, people that I'm seeing that are in places that I want to be, or people that I'm seeing that, have been where I've been before. Because, again, I've learned a very, very, very long time ago. And this is, I think, something that you learn playing sports, but then also as just a lifelong student, is I would much rather go to the person that spent the hours and the time doing what I want to do than trying to spend the hours and time trying to figure it out myself, right? There's a lot of lessons that have been learned by others who have lived it that makes it way easier and cuts a lot of BS out. And as long as I'm being a student and I'm listening and I'm not trying to like be the biggest brain in the room, then I'll be able to actually take those lessons and grow from them. And that's the key, right? It's an aspect of like, I now use networking to make sure that I can actually learn from others to advance and get to places faster and get those shortcuts that you're not going to be able to get. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is by being humble and by being a constant learner from others. So,
Nick, what a brilliant, mature answer. I'd ask if there was anything else you wanted to leave the listeners with, but I'm pretty sure that answer literally summed it up. But I will still give you the floor one last time if there is something you want to add.
I would say this. One of the biggest lessons that I've learned from an entrepreneur standpoint has been allowing myself to get out of my own way. So the only time that I've hit roadblocks, the only time that I've had back steps or anything like that is because of the fact that I didn't just let go and let it happen. And that has been kind of a huge eye opener for me. Yeah. I am at the end of the day, I am a man of faith, but it's one of those aspects of that's probably one of the hardest lessons to learn in faith as well, is to let go and understand that it's not in your control all the times. And if you're a type A individual like myself, that's the hardest thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah. So that would be the biggest kind of lesson that I would say is let go. Allow others to do what they're supposed to do. Allow others to grow and be the person that enhances those around you rather than focusing on yourself.
Nick Langer, Team BR Physique, thank you so much, so much for your time and valuable wisdom on today's podcast. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
Guys, if you like what you heard, please feel free to share this podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Share it with your friends, people who you think could receive value from it. We look forward to seeing you on our next one. Make sure that you are subscribed on Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you are listening from. We definitely appreciate it. We also go live on Facebook every week when we record these, so make sure that you're a member of the TRM Facebook group. In the meantime, thank you again, Nick. We appreciate it, and I can't wait to talk to you all later.